Yeah, all the anger in it too. Remember how angry you were? Wow.
Oh yeah, all the raging and yelling,
Yeah.
all the swearing. Uh,
There's
yeah,
something.
there it is.
Yeah, so this, just shows you how much pain you were in.
Mhm.
This is Andrew Daniel, and in the video you're about to watch, you'll see an interview between myself and one of my long term clients, Fred, who's worked with me for over a year and a half. In this video, Fred shares some of his challenges, the lessons, wisdom, and discoveries that he's made doing this work together, plus the manifestations and transformations that have occurred. Enjoy.
How are you,
Welcome.
Andrew?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
So, so thank you for taking the time to do this.
Hmm.
We've been working together for about a year and a half,
Yes.
and this has been a tremendous process for you.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so what I'd like to do in this conversation is just explore what this process has been like for you. And so I'd like to start with um, just a brief introduction of what you were doing before we met and what in your life led you to want to do this specific kind of work.
Mm. Well, the I guess where it begins for me was I received a diagnosis of thyroid cancer some years back. 2017 is when I found out, and I just kind of hit a pit of utter despair and just regret at that point. And I thought, what am I doing with my life? And if I die tomorrow, like, what was the point of it all? And it set me on a journey of just wanting to get some stuff figured out in my life. The biggest thing was figuring out dating and relationships. That was the key thing that I wanted to get handled because I just feel like that's been a lacking area of my life. So that led me to a lot of work with dating coaches first. And then I did a trip in London, took a boot camp there, kind of realized that there's a few more things possible than I thought were possible for me at the time. Yeah, a few breakthroughs there just in terms of how people were receiving me, and what my perception of myself was. And from there, I had discovered another dating coaching program. And in the course of working with them, there was a lot of talk about emotional muck, the past, previous traumas, everything that kind of got stored in my body. And to me, all at the time, it really seemed like a woo woo, way out there kind of thing. So, what do you mean stuck in my body? What do you mean energy? What do you mean the all this stuff gets blocked up and it affects my life? And at the same time, I knew there was something to it. Because I thought, well, maybe this is the reason why I've been so stopped and unsuccessful in my life, in terms of interpersonal relationships. So I explored that, and part of the teaching and the impartation that was given to me in that program was emotional releasing. That was the big thing. And I'm the kind of guy that goes all out when there's something that I really want to do. So I went and bought the books. There was like the Sedona method was the first one that I really dug myself into. And then the second one was Letting Go by David Hawkins, which is much along the same lines as the Sedona method, but a more simplified approach. So I'd spent a lot of time just doing the processes and the ideas in those books. And meanwhile, I was still on what we call a container call. So there was a group of guys that I had done this fearless program with. We just called it our container group. And I'd be on these calls every week, or every couple of weeks. We were having these calls, and we'd be sharing our wins. We'd be sharing our struggles, where our sticking points were. And I think about 6 months into that group, I don't know, I still felt like I was really stuck because there just wasn't any, excuse me, visible progress for me. I felt like I was just kind of going around this merry-go-round, coming to the same thing over and over again, and I couldn't get past these emotional and mental blocks. And one of the gentlemen that was in my group, it was a client of yours at the time, and he had mentioned, oh, there's this guy that mentored under Carl, your previous mentor, and he was talking about how you were teaching and coaching, facilitating along the lines of a more pure version of what Carl had taught, and that intrigued me. And several of us were curious at this point, so we all started asking him about what's going on here. He says, "Oh, well, there's this book, and awaken to your true self." And the author's name was in there, which is your name. So I picked up that book off of Amazon. I grabbed an e-copy of it and just started reading it. And that's kind of what led me to working with you. Well, that is what led me to working with you. When I read the book, it was just like everything you were saying in that book just struck a chord. I thought, okay, well, this makes sense. Everything makes sense in here. And at the same time, there was things I was reading in the book that really, really made me angry.
Like what?
Narcissism.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's a
have
good one.
a very in-depth chapter on narcissism. And it's like every next sentence I was reading was like, that's me. That's me. Holy cow, that's me. Yeah. And it's quite a thing when you're confronted with the truth. For me, it was eye-opening, being confronted by the truth like that, knowing that, okay, I can't escape this now. Every time before I always, whenever somebody said something to me that was truth, it would cut, but I would find some way to rationalize, like, well, that person's crazy. They don't know what they're talking. They got their own garbage going on. But to have a book just call me out on everything was depressing, infuriating, and eye-opening, all in the same time. And then I think
Sounds about right.
3/4 of the way through the book, I was hooked, and I realized, okay, I think I need to at least test the waters with this guy and see what this is about. So that led me to booking a discovery call with you. I think that's what it was called back then, discovery call, and it doesn't really matter.
But it was the assessment, right?
The assessment, yeah.
Which
the assessment.
Which is not any discovery call like anything else. Yeah.
No.
So how was that? How was that experience for you?
Oh, it was like nothing I've ever experienced.
You do some interesting things, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, in most discovery calls that I've worked with previous coaches on, it was pretty much just kind of we'd start with a preamble, like much like we've done today, when we talk about where we've been, what we've been doing, what are the goals and such. But and we did some of that in the initial assessment just to get a feel for each other, feel for where we wanted to go. And then at some point in the call, we said, okay, well, let's begin. Stand up, get the camera in full view. I want to see everything. See your body. I want to see you down, at least down to your, I think it was just below the waist or to the knees or something like that. And when he said, shake your hands, I thought, what the hell's going on? You didn't shake my hands. She's like, just shake your hands. And that was all the instruction that you gave me. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just shake my hands. And I just started doing the movement. I just started moving my hands. And then.
Which, by the way, did not look like what you just did.
Oh, probably not. No,
Yeah.
no. And I remember there were so many things that I was feeling and that were coming up in my body at the time. There's this real deep-rooted anxiety. Just the sense that I wanted to run away, that I wanted to stop doing everything. And as I remember you were giving me instruction of, okay, do it really small now and show me what doing it really big looks like. And I'm sure we've got some video along that line, but
oh yeah, we do.
It was we do, of course, because I remember what happened at some point. One of the maxims that you quote in your book, or was it the maxim you quoted, is doing things in reverse. Like try doing it backwards. And at one point, I remember you said, just do it backwards now. Show me what doing it backwards looks like. And it literally scrambled a circuit in my brain. That moment in time, I just felt like, what's going on? And it's like my head was doing this weird jerky motion. My hands were doing this completely different thing. And when I watched the replay, I didn't even realize it, but I started to smile and I started to have a little bit of fun at that time. And I wasn't even aware of what was happening in my body at that point. I wasn't even aware of the smile that was spreading on my face. And I was just having this, oh, this is different. This is what's going on here. And we're probably skipping over a few things here. At one point, as I was doing it backwards, you had said, slow it down. And this movement, there was a big shift in how the movement was going in that. And I could feel something completely different. It just felt foreign to me. And you said something about beauty. You're beautiful. And it was the first time I'd even remotely let in a little bit. It was just a little bit of that I let in. I didn't let the full impact of what you had said to me into me. But I let a bit in, and just this wave of emotion came through my whole body, and I started to weep during that time. And as we were talking after the fact, I think it was, I don't know, it was maybe about 5 or 10 minutes of that solid, maybe more. I haven't watched that video in a while, but for the first time, I felt more peaceful than I had been up to that point. Even with all the Sedona method technique of releasing and the Hawkins method of releasing, and and trying to force myself to meditate to bring this stuff up so I could let it go. The key thing was like I kept bringing all my emotion up with the express purpose to let it go, not to let it go, but to like, okay, I want this up so I can throw it away.
Yeah, get rid of it.
I want to get rid of it. I want to fix myself here and now, and this is how I'm going to do it. And apparently, it wasn't working. And in this one assessment call, just this whole idea that I was beautiful had been suppressed for decades of my life. And in that moment in time, there's just something changed, something shifted. And you had said that I didn't want to interrupt what was going on there because you were actually going through a lot of healing at that point. And I just kind of took it at face value because something was different. Something had shifted. And, I can't deny the power of what happened just in one change, one movement change, doing it backwards, what I was doing before. And then right after that call, I committed and booked a 6-month term with you, and then another 6-month term, and then another 6-month term, and here we are today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something happened, right?
Yeah.
It's always interesting because these calls are typically they're an embodiment assessment. They're not necessarily, all right, we're going to get into stuff and do the healing and transformation and all that. But sometimes it happens. I don't say no to it. But it's always amazing to see that while someone's just doing the assessment, they're getting transformation, they're healing, they're having breakthroughs just in that process. So it's always wonderful to see that things are just happening, and there's no waiting or forcing it or having to get to some magical method months down the road. It's like in that moment of you feeling and just doing something backward or doing something the opposite or doing something wrong or doing something in a way that you've never done before can unlock all of that emotion.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like everything I was doing prior to that, prior to starting to work with you, was done from a place of still being in prison, if as it were. Like I was trying to get myself out of prison by doing stuff, but it's like the tools that I had came from the prison itself, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And it's kind of a cryptic way of saying it, but there was just so much stuff happening at a deeper level that I couldn't deny. That like, okay, this is actually changing my mindset. This is actually changing the way I feel in my body. This is actually allowing me to let go of long-held beliefs and long-held emotions. Just this emotional muck that's in my body.
That you didn't even realize was there, right? I mean, how many sessions have we had and you're like, oh, look, where did that come from, right? We're talking about one thing and 20 minutes later, you're just like, ah.
Yeah. Well, even our last call, which we just had, was another one of those stories that I've just held in my subconscious for so long. It's just always been there. And I never really knew any different. I didn't realize that I could live a life without that. I think the words you said to me is, who are you without your stories?
Yeah.
And yeah. Like
which is interesting, right? Because I posed that question in the first chapter of the book. And this book that we're talking about, uh, it's great in conveying ideas and concepts, and a lot of people have got a lot of value from it. The thing is, there's stuff that you just can't get from a book. So anything you can get from a book, I put in the book, but there's stuff that you just have to experience that cannot be said, that cannot be written. It has to be felt. It has to be directly experienced, and
Mm-hmm.
that's an example of that where you've read it, you understand the concept, but then when you actually experienced it, I remember when I said just a couple weeks ago, even prior to that, who would you be without your family? And it's not literally your family; it's the voices, right? The images,
Mm-hmm.
the stories, the myths, the limitations of how you've built them up inside yourself.
Yeah.
And I remember, I remember I asked you that, and you were like, I mean, it was literally like smoke was coming out, the gears fell off and broke. It just,
Yeah.
it's one thing to mentally understand these concepts. It's another thing to actually experience them for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even just to expand that one statement there, uh, about who am I without my family? And it's like you said, it's not me physically removing myself from my family, or separating or disowning in one way, or just disassociating altogether. Is this we have I have this whole construct in my head of who each person is, what their relationship is to me, and it's all based on a perception I had formed when I was very young and didn't really understand what was going on. I didn't understand nuance. I just thought there was this black and white view of this person said this to me, so this means that I am that. I'm an idiot. I'm a moron.
Yeah.
I'm,
Whatever it is. Yeah.
exactly right. And it's not just one person in my family. It's all persons in my family.
Yeah.
Not to say that it was, and I'm making it sound like the family was horrible to me. No, it was like my perception is that's what it was, but the truth is somewhere way far away from that.
Well, and then on the other side, you actually had a fairly traumatic childhood. And so
Yeah.
not bypassing that and not denying that and actually facing that trauma that you actually experienced,
Mm.
um, without protecting the imaginary image you have of these people in order to,
Yeah.
hide and not face it. So we don't want to
Yeah.
get into too much specifics here, but
No. No.
it's really important to acknowledge things that actually did happen, because
So,
until you can tell the truth about what happened, you can't do anything about it.
mhm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
The truth needs no defense, as you said in the book.
right. And so
You
we
know.
know when we're defending somebody or ourselves or an idea or a concept, there's something in there that isn't quite true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm.
So
So
so we did that first session, and we did this weird handshaking thing, and that was bizarre. But you had an experience, and you had a direct experience that showed you there was something here.
mm-hmm.
So from that point, from starting it, as you embarked on the work with me, this private one-on-one work, we've done things with cinesomatics, the embodiment and movement work. We've done symbolism work. We've done a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Share a little bit about your experience, and maybe some of the you didn't have a lot of judgments, but you certainly faced a lot of challenges in this work. A
Mm.
lot of inner things that you've had to face. So if you want to share just some of the biggest challenges you've faced actually doing this work itself and what happened as you've moved past them.
It's that's a good one to talk about. Challenges.
Because this is a very different process than anything else, and it's very confronting,
I
to
think
say the
what
least.
one of the first one of the first things that revealed itself in the movement early on was the you called it the dopey little kid in me. Uh, there was this you had said that there was this energy and this feeling of the way I'm coming across, the way I present myself. And it's like, you look like a dopey little kid here. And when we when we dove a little bit deeper into that, I did not want to acknowledge that that was the truth, and again, that was the dopey little kid in me that wanted to just like hide from that. One of the biggest challenge in that was this belief that I have no power and no agency to direct my life. And where that came from was it was set very early on. I'm the youngest of 7 siblings in my original family, I guess you'd call it, before my mom passed away. And then after my mom passed away, my dad remarried and they had another child. But for the most part, the first 7 years of my life, I was always the smallest one. And I was always kind of like the last in line kind of thing. And it seemed that everything going on around me was, I had no input into it. I had no say. I felt like I had no say. I felt like I had no power to, direct the way things were going. And so I think it was like early on, I just kind of threw up my hands like, well, I don't know. I don't know how to do these things. And nobody's shown me, nobody's taught me. So I'm just going to not take any responsibility. And that's been the recurring theme that challenges me the most is taking responsibility. Because as soon as I'm faced with the prospect of taking responsibility for the direction of my life, for what I do, for any discipline or lack thereof, this thought of responsibility always terrified me. And there's several things that came up with that was I had broken things as a child, and breaking things always meant like retribution was swift,
Punishment.
if
Yeah.
punishment. So when I talk about just ornamental things like an ornamental teacup that sat on a shelf that nobody ever drank tea from, it was just sitting on the shelf. If I broke something like that, then there was a lot of yelling and there was a lot of shame that came with that. So there's this mishmash of shame, of fear, all interlaced with this desire to run away from responsibility. And there's a whole ton of stories around all of the ornamental things in my house, the way I perceive them. But at one point, I had perceived that these ornamental things are more valuable than me. And that was a subconscious underlying belief that governed everything else.
Well,
So I've always had
probably
this.
it probably didn't originate with you. The environment you were in likely, whether explicitly or implicitly, implied that, and then
Mm-hmm.
you bought into it, right?
Yeah, like it wasn't. That's a great way to say it. Implicitly versus explicitly. There was this belief that I somehow took clued into, bought into, and then yeah, it just kind of dictated the way the rest of the things went in my life. So I always saw myself as this young kid, the youngest of seven kids, having no agency, and then like just abdicating responsibility.
Not a lot of value, right? Things are
No
more
value.
valuable than you. Lots of
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we're just kind of scratching the surface of those
Yeah.
early things. There's a lot of things going on, and I think one of the biggest challenges was getting into my body and feeling everything. And that's what I will want to highlight specifically in this work is to have somebody hold the space for me to do that. And not just hold the space, but actively lead me towards that which I'm afraid of, you know. And, and I think at some point you knew something was there. There was something very significant and important for me to face in all of that. And finding the specifics was always the hard part for me because it's all the stuff I've been afraid to look at for, well, decades, like I said earlier. So yeah, the the challenge of facing the childhood stories that I look back now and realize like, okay, yeah, this is why my life went like that in my teens. This is why my life went like that in my 20s, in my 30s, and up to today where I am now. And always this low key self hatred that I carried as part of that, part and parcel of that. There's no real one factor that caused me to hate myself. There was all of these things mixed together and me buying into all these stories of I'm worthless, I have less worth than these things, I have no authority and power to direct myself. Yeah, it was. That's the biggest. That's the one that immediately comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly more. So as you going through this process, some of the challenges and realizations that you've had that you just shared, what have been some of the biggest breakthroughs that happened um, during the work? So at the end, we're going to share a little bit about where you are now and what's transpired in your life from all of this. But as you were actually doing this work, what were some of the biggest lessons? What were some of the biggest breakthroughs and transformations that occurred working together? And I know there's a lot. It's been a year and a half. Um,
Yeah. I think the biggest one to date, and that's a very recent one, was discovery of creativity. That I do have a lot of creative gifts. One in particular is my ability with music. I mean, it's the thing I was born with this ability to identify a note just by hearing it. And before I even started taking formal theory training in lessons, I it was just innate. I didn't
yeah,
even realize it was there. And then upon starting music lessons, learning the basic theory, the scales, the notes in the scale, at one point I mean, as like I said to you on one of the calls, like this is like breathing for me. It was like breathing for me to hear music and be able to replay it in my mind. Like I could hear a song I could like actually zoom into a certain spot in the song, and I could rewind it, play it again, and it was just
Yeah. Just
it's this
normal.
weird thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was normal, and upon hearing from other people, it's like normal people can't do that, Red.
Yeah.
And it didn't dawn on me that, oh, normal people, most people can't identify a note, but just
Yeah.
by hearing it.
Perfect pitch. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, after having that revealed to me in an early age, I did nothing with it. Uh, there's this
Well,
other story.
well, yeah. I mean, not only did you not do anything with it, you were shamed for it. You were attacked for it, and
My
have
perception, yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah,
whether you did or it was your perception, it kind of had the
yeah,
same effect where you just shut it down, right?
yeah. Oh, definitely. It was just like this hiding that light, or stubbing out the candle, or putting a bowl over the no one lights a light and puts it under a bowl.
Yeah.
Those uh
So
comes
you
from the
didn't get
Bible days. Yeah.
so you didn't get hurt, right? Because having that gift equated people hurting you, and right,
Hmm.
this is the logic of a child. That's what we do. Protect
Yeah,
ourselves. Yeah.
yeah. Even if that in it, and it happened years later, but it was the tape from the childhood that was running on the background of that. So I perceived this as an attack on me, as on me personally.
Yeah.
And oh, I got to shut this down because I can't let this happen, because I can't feel this. I will not allow myself to feel this because this is too unpleasant. This hurts too much. But yeah, so recently in the course of our work together, that we kind of broke through some of that. And I remember I picked up a guitar on one of our calls, and I just let it buck. I just let it ride. And I was again making up chord progressions on the fly. I was just playing along and playing in relatively good rhythm, as far as I could tell. And my fingering, like I'm always this
Okay.
consummate perfectionist.
I'm gonna pause you here, because
Okay.
because I want to tell this story a little differently. Um, so we've been working together for over a year at this point, and you've mentioned that you performed music for in church, and
Church, yeah.
yeah, and so you had this skill, and you knew how to play music and everything, but it never came up in normal conversation of, oh, what you like to do, or there was no inclination that this was a huge part of your life, and it hasn't been anymore. And so
Hmm.
it hasn't been something that we really dove into in the first part of our work, because that first part of our work was really about getting you out of suffering.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so there's a lot we could talk about, even just around that. But we had to get you out of that suffering first for this stuff to even be accessible, to even have a
yeah.
meaningful conversation about it.
Oh, yeah,
So
totally.
so yeah, so this was just like 2 months ago, and we're on a call, and so I'm here with Fred having a call, and he's like, yeah, I was doing some research about jobs I could do while I travel, because we were uncovering that maybe you wanted to live in Bali and travel the world. You have this passion for that. It's like, great.
Hmm.
Because in this work, basically help you live the life of your dreams, whatever you want, it's possible. And so listening to that, and I don't know what happened, but you're like, yes. And so in my spare time, uh, I was just wanting to learn programming and
Web
JavaScript.
development.
Yeah,
Yeah.
web development. Now, I come from web development. 20 years ago, I started to learn this stuff. So I'm not knocking it, because it was a huge part of my life. I started a software company, and I was the one doing the programming. Um, However, upon hearing this, and 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 then hearing that, and then something led to, well, what are you really passionate about, or what's your creativity, or something like this. And you mentioned like music just in passing, and I was like, oh no, there's something to this. And I said, when's the last time you played guitar? It's like you're trying to learn JavaScript, and you're like, I don't know, 2 years or something, right? 12 months, 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's
Oh,
been some time,
yeah.
2 to 3 years.
Yeah, a long time. Like, all right. So I say, grab your guitar, and you get your. I'm just like, I just want to hear something, because maybe you weren't very good, right? Maybe you were just like, you didn't have any skill, and it was just a passion. That probably would have not been something I would say is going to make you a lot of money right away.
Hmm.
If you want to pursue it, absolutely fantastic. Please express yourself however you would like. But as
Hmm.
far as let's figure out what you're going to be able to do to have a job, maybe not. Maybe so. We got to find out. We got to tell the truth about where you're really at. And you pick up this guitar and you just make something up that sounded better than anything I've heard on the radio in the past year. And I'm like, JavaScript my ass. Like, are you kidding me? And
Yeah.
so you from there, you said, I don't know, I've had this melody. I don't know if it was that same call or the next call. You said, I've had this melody or song in my head. And then I said, okay, well, like, can I hear it in some sort of way? And you just hum it, and you a cappella like 5 different sections of an orchestra. And I'm like, what? What is this? And so
Hmm.
you have been doing engineering, you've been doing all this other stuff, and here you're making symphonies with perfect pitch in your mind, and then you fiddle with it for like the first time on GarageBand. You don't even have proper software. You just have this stuff. You get a little keyboard and you play it. And so it was just absolutely incredible that here's someone in front of me that could literally be a world renowned composer or musician in some sorts. And he's thinking about learning coding. Now, nothing against coding, but when you have a gift like this, and it wasn't only a gift, this is something that you told me you were passionate about. I think, no, it's coming back to me. This came up when I said something like, all right, you're on your deathbed. What would be the one thing you wish you pursued? Or what would be the one thing you were what would you find the most fulfillment about? Something like this.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's where it came up. And you're like, music. And I'm like, music? You never even, I mean,
Yeah.
we've done life maps, we've done all of this stuff, and you haven't even mentioned music. So
Yeah. No.
okay, now it came back to me. And so that led us to, all right, get guitar out. When have you played? You want to learn JavaScript, but that's the thing you're most passionate about.
Hmm.
And so this was just a month or two ago. And so this is the cutting edge of what we're helping you with. And
Yeah.
you know, talk about this a little bit, because this is the power of two things. One, this is the power of these myths, these stories, this
Yeah.
trauma that can completely hide and suppress so much creativity. And I don't want to just say gift in a way that makes it sound like you have some sort of burden and we're going to whip it out of you because it's your duty. You actually are
Hmm.
passionate about it. You actually enjoy this. You actually come alive doing this.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
these stories and these traumas suppress this for decades.
Yeah.
And we don't know for certain, but there is a possibility that if we hadn't have gone through this process, you may have gone to your grave without exposing this, without realizing this,
Well,
w-
yeah.
without
Definitely.
without
Yeah.
actualizing this in any way. And then the second
Hmm.
thing is the power of this work in being able to reveal this and allow you to
Mm-hmm.
actually have those breakthroughs in order to make this a reality. Because we don't want to just have
Mm-hmm.
this fantasy. And plenty of people want to be famous musicians. So this
Mm-hmm.
is not about just the fantasy. This is about how do you actually create this in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a bit of my version of the story and my
Oh
spiel.
yeah.
So I'm gonna hand the mic over to you.
Sure. Like, I mean, the first time inkling that this came up was on that call. You had said, like, what you're on your deathbed or you're going to your deathbed, what is the one thing that you would regret having not done? And it took me a while to get there. And that's how deep it was buried inside. I just kept it from everybody. And the words that came out of my mouth was, I would regret not having produced any music or produced a song or composed something. It was all about creating some music, and you clued into that immediately. Like
Yeah,
your
it was
face
what it was,
completely.
yeah, it was what you would keep from the world. You know, something like
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah. What do you
Like
wish you would share it with the world?
yeah, before you died. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember I didn't want to. I didn't want to go there
Yeah, you didn't.
because
Yeah.
like I was being stubborn, like, particularly stubborn that day.
Yeah.
And when I finally just allowed myself the luxury of just sharing that one thing, it just opened a whole new world up. And it
Yeah.
was like I had I'd never really given myself permission to write something like that. And I had written music before, like written songs and just came up with something. And every time I did something like that, made up something on the spot, these images of people come into my head, and they'd be basically telling me, "Oh, that's no good." It's like
Mm.
anybody could do that, and all this real negative bullshit about how I'm not good enough to be on par with other musicians that are actually out there performing. So instead of basing the discomfort of that thought, I would just like, yeah, I don't
Let's
want to do
watch
it.
YouTube.
But yeah, just go to YouTube, fill my mind with a bunch of mindless garbage. Like, so once I allowed myself to actually feel and feel the possibility that could be, that I could actually write something, that I could actually put something of beauty and creativity to the world. Well, that just opened up a whole new avenue, a whole new way of looking at life. Uh,
It was a
you,
whole area of your life that just the door was locked on. It's like living in a house and there's a whole floor that you just never let yourself go up to. You just lock it.
yeah, yeah, that's really what happened. So I grabbed the guitar and thought, okay, well, this is what I used to do. I just grabbed the guitar and pull out my stool, started strumming, and they were just basic chords, right?
Yeah.
They're all, nothing past the third fret kind of thing. Playing G chord, C chord, D chord, but I started just playing with the arrangement. It's like, okay, well, I can do this next. And it's none of it's formal theory training. It was all by feel. And at some point, at, I don't know, probably about 30 seconds to a minute in, this wave, this rush of emotion just overtook me. And I remember describing it to you as like, this is what it used to feel like when I was leading. Sometimes when I was leading worship music at the church, I would have these moments where I just felt this awesome connection with everything around me. I equated that with my connection. I'm worshiping. I'm connecting with God. This is the Holy Spirit. This is none of it's me, right? It's all everything else except for me. I couldn't have possibly done anything except just be willing. And here I am sitting in my office on a video call with you, and I'm having the same experience. and it's I'm not directing my gaze to the sky, as it were. I'm not singing any of the words that I used to sing that would used to put me into that state. This just spontaneously happened, and I think it was at that moment that the door swung wide open at that point, and I was just standing in front of this door, looking at this whole new room or this whole new floor of the house that I'd never seen before. Like I knew it was there. I just never allowed myself to go in there, you know. And it's I think within a day, uh, there was as with most of our calls, there's this integration period,
Sure. Yeah.
so this period where I'm finally just like taking it all in and processing just what's going on and allowing it to be a part of me. So after that call, this whole music thing became a part of me again. I let it be. I started hearing this symphony type music in my head. It's very ballroom dance kind of thing. I kind of envisioned someone dancing a tango or something really old school ballroom, and I couldn't shake it. And I am still hearing it in my head right now, even as we speak. But I mean, this is a tune that was bouncing around my head probably about 2 or 3 years ago. I thought, yeah, something like this.
Wow, you remembered this from 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just kind of like 2 years ago. This
A little
part,
bit,
this
sure.
little measure, these three measures
Yeah.
were in my head, and I just kind of shoved it all away. Like, gonna go there because nobody's gonna like it.
Yeah.
I'm no good, and I can't do this as well as the Hans Zimmers, the Howard Shores, the Mozarts, the Bachs. But so that day after that, this tune pops right back into my head, and I can hear it as clear as day, as I did that many years ago. And I started to indulge this now, started to actually explore and think about it. Oh, okay. And when we jumped on our next call, I think I was pretty excited to actually talk about this. Something's going on here. I've got this tune in my head, and I was describing in detail. It's like, okay, so we have violins. I have part for second violins. I have a part for the stand-up bass. It's a plucking bass. And then I was just like, okay, well, I mean, these are parts of like a string quartet thing. And I remember you questioned me, and you asked, as we do, it's like, okay, where in the song, like what parts are you missing? And point to it, and like try to
Well,
get into the space.
yeah, you said, I don't know if it was the cellos.
The cellos, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
And you're like, you're like, I feel like there should be cellos, but I don't know where it is or what it's like, or it's missing
yeah,
that. And then that's when I said, that's when we did cinesomatics with it in a certain way.
yeah, yeah.
So go ahead.
So I mean, like we started doing the cinesomatic, like the movement, and it's just like I think what it was I was envisioning a score sheet, like where people are composers write music, and remember you said, okay, point to the space where the cello is, and I knew exactly where it should be. It's
Yeah.
like I had all this other stuff already. I pointed to it, and immediately I started playing this whole thing back in my mind. I'm hearing all the other pieces, and I'm thinking about the cello, and I'm pointing at the cello, and I'm actually just, for lack of a better word, plugging into the space there with my
Yeah. Yeah.
with my
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
And then I was engaging my left hand to do the other parts, and then we were switching around. I was switching around a bit, but embodying that space where the cello was. As I was like playing this music back, I could hear parts of the cello all of a sudden start to come into life. And I think it only took about 5 to 10 seconds, maybe 15 or something like that. But like okay, I got the cello part, and I could hear there's whole notes, there's couple of half notes, or whole notes, and I didn't even know what key this was in until I sat down at the keyboard and started playing back what I heard in my head, and it was just the coolest thing ever. I was like, I've got the cello part now, and then
Isn't it
yeah,
amazing how this work, this energetic stuff, it's you could have composers, writers, musicians, whatever. They come in and they're like, I'm plateaued, I'm blocked, I can't figure this out, and we just get
hmm
them in their body and give them a little energy and direction, and they break through, and you were able to
yeah,
do that in 5-10 seconds. But
yeah,
who? But you would just never have known to say, well, where's the cello? What do you mean, where's the cello? Uh, But as soon as I did, you knew. As soon as I asked you, you had it. So share a little bit about feeling and because this is a huge part of this work and what I've
hmm
seen in the world over the past century really is the decline of creativity, whether it's dancing, ice skating, music, acting, movies, writing. It's the decline of feeling. It's people going into their head and figuring
yeah,
it out in the intellect rather than allowing the intelligence, rather than tapping into feeling. And that's really the X factor. When you see people that you're like, how do they do it? Or there's just something about them we can't put my finger on. Or how is it that that person is able to break through and they're not as technically good as this person? Well, in this work, I've figured that out. The answer, you guys are, whoever's watching this is the multi-million dollar secret. It's
yeah,
feeling. These
hmm
people are not in their heads. They're in the now, they're in the moment, they're in their body, and they're feeling their way through this. So, share a little bit about your experience about this process itself, but in general, about how you're living more from feeling, you're creating and operating more from this feeling place, and the almost magical results and changes that's brought you.
Oh, I guess the first big one I could talk about was starting work again. Because when we had started this work, I was unemployed, and it
Oh,
was
so so yeah, you got a job,
yeah,
uh,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, six-figure job. That
Yeah,
that one little thing that happened. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I mean, the preamble to this was I had just gotten tired with what I was doing. And I was doing this contract project management work as an independent guy. So I had my own company on paper, and I was subcontracted out through another company, an agency. I was just feeling dead. I couldn't do it anymore. I just had to stop. There was just no purpose in the work I was doing. So I'd taken time off. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use this time to get myself sorted out. And that was in part and parcel with all the coaches I had been working with before releasing work. So I think, what was it, about 6 months to between 6 months, 6 and 8 months after I started working with you, I finally got out of my way enough to actually look for a job again. And part of it was I was motivated too because I was starting to run out of money. my, my, my
That could do
savings
it.
were,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think I balked at the idea of going back into engineering work initially. I don't know. Well, as soon as I was unemployed, I thought, do I want to go back into engineering again? Is this for me? And I think at that point, I just done enough clearing per se. I'd done enough releasing, letting go, feeling, getting back into my body that stopping all the negative stories that I had at that point just allowed me to swallow my pride, go back and okay, well, I have years of experience in engineering. I can do this again. Not a problem. So I applied on one job that I had seen. It was with a mining contractor. They were looking for specifically an electrical engineer. So I sent my application in. In short order, I had been called for an interview. And this was still during the days of COVID. So the interview was on Microsoft Teams. So there's a panel of people there interviewing me. And answers were coming quick. I was not in my head as much in that meeting, in that interview. Every question that everyone had for me, I had an answer for. And it was just like, I remember stepping away from that interview feeling like, I feel really good about this. And I just kind of let go of that. Like, well, if they call me back, then they call me back. If they don't, then I'm just going to keep looking for the next thing.
No attachment. Yeah.
Yeah. They call that outcome independent, I guess. Not attached to the outcome. And, subsequently I was offered the job. So I went from 0 income to pretty much a 6-figure income in the matter of a couple of weeks. So,
Well,
I mean, it's, yeah.
The magic of the quantum field, the magic of feeling. Because you see that those answers weren't stuff that you had to figure out in your head and come up with or search for. They came to you. That's what you said, right? The answers just came, and they came from your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
The feeling space.
Yeah. And it was just, I feel like I just left a very favorable impression with everybody in that call. And it was like I said, it was just automatic. It was like breathing. I didn't have to make up this or concoct this whole scheme, this whole story about, my career progression. I just kind of let the wisdom come to me.
Yep.
And I mean, it's not like I've been a terrible employee for my entire adult career. So there's that to consider. But yeah, just not getting so caught up in trying to think my way through it. It was just, here's my answer.
Yeah, just reporting the details, just answering the questions. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's been another huge breakthrough too. Is I used to preamble everything whenever I had conversations with people, or where I would just tell story about story after story after story. I would say, okay, well, I want to do this because of this, and this. And there's like 6 or 7 different things that are mixing into this mash of why I'm making this decision right now. Instead of just saying, I'm making this decision right now. I'm going to
all this extra noise and trying to protect yourself with preemptive stories, all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to make the one thing that I need to communicate more valuable than it actually is by adding all this extra stuff.
Yeah, which actually does the opposite. It makes it less valuable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I've noticed this too in other people when I talk to them, and I notice they're running that whole background program, that noise. I'm thinking, oh shit, this is what people feel like when I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And it was just like another light bulb turns on and a whole nother avenue opens up. So now I can just say, yeah, we're just going to do this. And then just let it stand on its own.
Yeah. Wow. It's even great hearing you say this.
Yeah. Where were we? Yeah. So the
feeling,
getting back into feeling, so it allowed me to enter the workforce again, become a productive member of Western society.
Yeah, and a really valuable asset to your company. I mean, within a few months, they're like wanting to give you a raise, and you're getting promoted to do higher level work out in the field. People are coming to you, and all of this stuff was happening as that stuff kept happening as we would have our calls. And you'd say, well, at work this happened, and we'd say, oh, well, this is how you're interacting with people. This is how you're relating to yourself and other people. And then you'd have a shift and breakthrough. And then the next day and week at work, things would change. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's
Yeah, allowing myself to behave and interact with people in ways that I never allowed myself to before. I always had this intimidation around high level managers. And, you know, I think part of this is just like getting rid of those, stopping those stories. And then all of a sudden, higher level managers were recognizing me,
well,
acknowledging me.
and one of the things too was actually around responsibility, right?
Yeah.
We had some calls where it was about, well, what if you showed up like you own the place? What if you showed up and you took responsibility for things that maybe weren't technically your responsibility? Things like that. There was other stuff too,
Hmm.
but it was that whole thing of showing up and actually being of value, being of service, and
Hmm.
um, complete contrast to the dopey little kid that we started this call
Yeah.
and our work with. And
Yeah.
yeah, what was that like to then be seen in a way that was actually authoritative and valuable and as a mentor?
I think I told you this right after it occurred. It actually scared the shit out of me. This is here I am. I end up on a site. We were setting up for a job in the mountains. And it was the plan. I had all these plans of how to set things up for everything that we were doing. The electrical gear, generators, fuel tanks, all this stuff. And immediately, day one, all those plans got thrown out the window, and we had to change on the fly. So I just, I had actually had to suppress a lot of stuff that was coming up at that point. But another topic, I took responsibility, and I allowed myself to take that responsibility. So I started directing work. I started making requests. Okay, we need this pad built up here, we need rock dumped here, we need that smoothed out, we need the tanks over here, we need the generators over here. And I just made an adjustment. We got the job set up and all done. And I never really thought anything of it at that point. But one of the real high up guys in the company that hired us, our crew, to do this job, all of a sudden started coming to me for any time that he had specific questions about how to set up the next site.
Yeah.
It really intimidated me. That's like I said, I was pretty scared, but I just told him everything as it was. I allowed myself to just get out of my own way and just shared with this guy, okay, well, this is what we need, and can you help us with this? And he, consider it, make some, yeah, that seems reasonable. Okay, we can do this. And to the point where I started making more outrageous requests in my mind at the time, but it was actually reasonable for the job that we needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought, this is outrageous. He's never going to accept this. It was like, yeah, so I went and did this thing for you. We just set it up. We have the guys here. Oh, okay, that was easy.
Yeah. So you get
How easy was that?
exactly. So you get to see how getting out of your own way, your life gets easier, which tells you what? It tells you that you've been making your life harder than it needs to be.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and you're seeing how capable you really are. Now you've never given yourself the opportunity to see how capable you really were because it invalidates that whole childhood of, you know,
The dopey little kid that
yeah,
doesn't want to take responsibility. Right?
yeah, and not being valuable, all of this stuff.
Mhm.
And so,
And
go ahead.
to add an addendum to all that, so the feedback from the site got back to my direct supervisor, and like he actually made a point to mention it to me. He said, I've had a lot of really great feedback about you, the job that you were doing on it at the site there. And it was just kind of like a feather in my cap at that point. It felt pretty good. There's a little bit of that story that kind of wanted to come up and say, well, what anyone could have done that. It wasn't anything special. I was just getting the job done.
Well,
Like
and
all
this is what you did with the music too. You're like, oh no, I just know
oh
how to,
yeah. Well,
right?
and that highlights that principle that you said over and over, and
Oh
it's in
yeah,
your book of
that one.
how you do one thing
Yeah.
is how you do everything.
Yep.
And it's so true. And I mean, like, just the amount of discovery I've had with just that one
Yep.
maxim.
Yep.
It's just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
yeah, how I do one thing is how I do everything.
And the also cool thing is that when you change something in one area of your life, it also changes in the rest. So you have this
Yeah.
transformation in business, and it's going to transform in your music. You have these breakthroughs in music, you're going to show up in your job in a new way and in your
Yeah.
relationships differently. Even
Hmm.
you doing this work, you've became such a great gift to your friends and the people in your life and saying, oh, hey, well, they start asking you questions like, should I do this? What do you think? What's going on with me? Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this whole process, and sure, you've learned a lot of stuff and you've had a lot of transformation and healing,
Hmm.
but really, it's all you. It's all been there. Now, some of the advice or this or that, that's just stuff that we gain, the wisdom, but your capacity, your capability, your heart, your soul, the essence of who you are, your level of being in the world is just has has been and still is so much greater than you've been allowing yourself to do, because just the things that invalidates, the things that pushes against, and the discomfort that causes. So you've had to be you've you've been very uncomfortable in some of these calls, but the
Oh,
results
some
of,
calls more than other. Yeah.
yes, but the results speak for themselves.
Hmm.
So share a little bit about, because some people I know this, they're going to say, all right, well, you signed up for 6 months and then another 6 months, another 6 months. It's a year and a half. Is this guy just stringing you along? Like, why do you keep showing up? What's been happening in your life that causes you to continue to do this work?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think after the first 6 months, the tangible benefit that I saw was just in an overall improved emotional health. Like there was just, I felt so much more lighter, more peaceful. Uh, this is like this dark fog was lifting a little bit at a time. Noise, a markable lack of noise in my head. But why it kept showing up was simply put, it works. It's been working. I can't deny that I'm a much different person today than I was 18 months ago. I'm taking responsibility. I'm I'm thinking of the future in more positive terms. Exploring creativity. I'm being more successful in my job. And I think that's one thing that I really need to highlight is a lot of the jobs I'd spent a few years at a time just being there and then kind of move on to the next thing. And it's usually because there was some interpersonal conflict that I couldn't resolve. And most of it was the interpersonal conflict was in my own head. It wasn't with the person itself.
An interperson conflict.
An interperson conflict, yeah. Somebody had triggered something that was lying innate within me, and I just couldn't face it. But as I keep coming to these calls and we get more discovery, it's just some days I hate it. I'll be honest, I hate it when you call me out. I hate when it's like, Fred, stop bullshitting. Fred, you're indulging in this. Fred, just stop.
Stop.
And those are the times where I'd like to reach through the camera and just hit you, but I
Yeah.
can't. And there's other times where I just want to run away and hide. Most of the time, I just want to run away and hide. We haven't really hit the anger as often as I thought
I
we
think
might
you've
be.
moved past through a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just the discovery of everything that's locked away in my subconscious, all the stories, the long held beliefs. I just feel like I can do my life better. I can live my life better now. And that's why I keep showing up. Nothing else has been able to get me to this point. I haven't found anything yet.
Yeah,
And I've
me
tried a few
neither.
things.
And if you do, let me know.
I mean, I've dabbled in a few different things, like I said, the Sedona method and letting go, and I still hold those close because these work very closely together.
Sure.
And at the end of it, the way you've helped me and facilitate me is just encouraging me to feel, and that's essentially what letting go, the Hawkins method is just feel it, allow yourself to feel it, and everything that comes up with that. And other things I've done, I've tried meditation, and that's actually starting to grow a little bit more. It's kind of cool, actually,
Yeah.
but more as a result of probably just stopping everything else. I did a dark retreat recently. That was a pretty wild experience, and it was like more of the same things were happening when I had nothing to distract me. Feelings, like stories would come up, feelings and emotion.
But
And
now you had the tools and the understanding to know how to deal with all of
yeah,
that.
and knowing how to use the tools. You call them reference points, and I have a lot more reference points now. Okay, I'm indulging in this. I'm really indulging in this guilt or this shame. Guilt and shame are the biggest ones, I would say. And I don't know what's still down there. There's probably more. I'm pretty sure.
We'll find out.
We'll find out, definitely. But yeah, just to highlight that, yeah, it works. Is the simplest way. It works, and it's helping me to get my life working better. And I can't really deny the results because I'm pretty sure I would have still been stuck in a lot of shit if I hadn't started actually working with you here. Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, the proof being in the pudding, and I tell people this, this isn't theory-based work. This is not even evidence-based work. This is results-based work.
Yeah.
We do what gets results, even if it's weird and wacky, even if it's uncomfortable and not fun, even if it's not politically correct or cute. We do what works. And what works is what gets real results. There's a real transformation, not just a superficial one, not just the material. Because great, all right, you're making 6 figures. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that alone is worth it for most people. Mm-hmm. But you also have all of this inner healing, the peace that's now in your life. Mm-hmm. And what I like to say is that you're more you now than you were before. Mm-hmm. You're more who you really are now than you were before, because this process is not additive, it's subtractive, right?
Yeah.
So
less of all the bullshit, really.
Yeah, all the things that aren't you, the stories, the myths, the traumas, the pain, the fears, all of that stuff isn't really you. But with that proof being in the pudding, I want to come to a finish in this call with looking at some of your video. And this is always the favorite part for everybody, and
Oh yeah.
seeing the before and after. So we've had a good long time, about an hour and a half, to get a feel for you and where you're at now. So let's take a look at some of this early footage. Now I have nothing prepared. We didn't plan this ahead of time. We purposely said, let's just pick stuff on the fly and take a
Hmm.
look at it to get our real reactions. Because every time I do this with people, I'm like, oh my God, that was you. Because as we're doing this work, we're seeing each other every week. So those changes sometimes are really apparent, but sometimes they're gradual
Yeah.
because we're in it. So let me let me take a look and find some stuff to bring up. And if you want to just share anything else real quick while I'm taking a look.
No, I think I've been talking a lot,
Okay.
a lot more than I usually do, except like on our actual work calls where we're doing the work. It's I'm starting to find my voice. I'm just musing about how my voice sounds different now, even.
Yeah, and
Whereas,
you're so much more in feeling.
yeah,
I was checking. I was watching you during this call, and it was amazing the percentage, just the incredibly high percentage that you've gone into your body to feel
hmm,
and speak from that place compared
yeah.
to before is just it's just it's
Oh,
it's
I
it's, it's
was,
remarkable. Like I'm impressed and I admire it.
mm,
So
yeah.
let's
I think I was perpetually stuck in my head for before I met you.
yeah, well, most of us are. Let's see. When did you kind of find you? There you're there July. Right here you're in June, I think. That's you. No, I don't even know who that is. All right. Yeah, I guess. Do you know when your assessment was? It looks like
Somewhere in
yep,
June or
this is
July
you. June 18th. Huh?
of 2021.
Yeah.
Man, 2021. It's 2023 now. Wow.
All right, let's bring this up. I don't know how interesting this will be, but we got some footage to take a look at. That's you, right?
Oh yeah, that's me. Oh wow. Like even here, just so much sadness.
Yeah, you look so much older.
Mm,
Yeah, this was doing it slowing
yeah,
backward.
slow it down.
You can see the panic coming in.
Hmm. Yeah, letting it in here,
Yeah.
and it hurts. Oh my God, does it ever hurt there?
Okay, so that was the first one. Now let's see if we got, I think this might be the archetype. Let's bring this one up. We'll see. This is, I think, the next one I got. That's funny. I look different too. It's a while ago.
Yeah, there's that undeserving feeling. There's this pain underneath all of it.
You see how you're up in your head?
Yeah.
That was an archetype. Definitely feel different.
Mm.
Let's see.
Giving and receiving. I think that was.
Oh, here's one. You don't look too happy here.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this is the okay, this is great. This is
Yeah.
that terror that was running you so much in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. I remember you specifically telling me to keep my eyes open
Yeah, because you didn't want to look at
because
this
I didn't
stuff.
want to look at it.
And
I'm
you can even
fighting
see
it
you're
there.
modulating it. You're not really
Yeah.
fully letting go yet.
Yeah.
But this terror was running you all of the time.
Mm-hmm. One thing I noticed during that time was I used to hold a lot of tension in my stomach, just like doing mundane things like washing the dishes. And there was this terror that this fear that I was going to do it wrong, and that there was going to be punishment if I did it wrong.
Yeah, so you can see this was a huge process for you to go through.
And that wasn't just one call. I think there were several calls
Yeah,
where I had
I mean, the
this.
terror lasted for months.
Yeah.
But this was the first time that we accessed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all the anger in it too. Remember how angry you were? Wow.
Oh yeah, all the raging and yelling,
Yeah.
all the swearing. Uh,
There's
yeah,
something.
there it is.
Yeah, so this, just shows you how much pain you were in.
Mhm. Yeah,
Guess
I didn't feel safe feeling that pain for so long.
I mean, it aged you too. I mean, you see yourself on these videos? You look so much older.
Yeah, yeah.
And and of course, not nearly as happy. I mean, you look like just like a happy, great guy now. But you had to go through all this stuff because this stuff was there.
Yeah.
It was lodged deep inside.
Yeah, and it's amazing how we get this messaging that you ignore it or you avoid it, and it
Yeah.
just somehow like
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
goes away, right? But it never does go away. And I tried explaining this to someone once. It's like you just gotta feel it. And he gets terrified every time I tell him that. And I have compassion for him because I understand that terror that of not wanting to look at that. This is deep, old stuff, and only things that it's like the 4-year-old mind can only understand a certain context, certain nuance, and just makes everything black and white. This means this. This means I'm a bad person. This means I'm whatever. I should feel shameful because of this. I crapped my pants. I should feel shameful. Shameful. Yeah, that was a good one. That one. I remember some tension in my forehead actually dissipating after that call too.
So you can see in this one, I mean, how blind you are.
Mhm.
Yeah, gosh, I can't get over how old you look.
Mhm. A little bit of a shift happening right there.
Yeah. Well, you finally were starting to let something in here.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing, just movement, just doing movement,
Yeah.
and how that just transforms. Oh, come a long way. And
I see.
what's the saying you say? This is just the beginning.
Yeah. Okay, here's. We'll just do this last one. I mean, there was some great ones where you were the one with the couch, and I mean, we just had so many great experiences. We can't show everything here, but
Mm-hmm.
just to see these beginning ones. And so this was 6 months in. So at this point, this was December. Certain a plea to God.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how much stuff there was for you to move through.
Hmm.
Just all of this pain, this disconnection here, this abandonment.
Hmm.
Wow. You've been through a lot.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is lifetimes of stuff in just a short amount of time.
I remember thinking at the start when I signed up for 6 months that maybe he can have me fixed in about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then we get 6 months in, like, wow, okay, there's still lots here that needed to move. And yeah, getting out of suffering, and I'll be honest, I do go back there sometimes. Every now and again I'll indulge in the suffering is the key word.
Chocolate or
So
vanilla? Strawberry, banana, Rocky Road, chocolate chip, cookie
I
dough.
would say chocolate. I'm more of a
You like
Oreo
yeah,
cookies.
Oreo cookie
vanilla.
chocolate suffering
Yeah.
indulgence.
Yeah. I haven't watched a lot of my old previous videos there for a while. I think at one point I was watching 3 or 4 times in between calls, just because there was so much, and it's like watching the video would bring all that stuff up again, and like sometimes it would be more intense because there was some stuff that was out of the way, and I'd feel even more. And other times it would be less intense. And I thought, oh, it's less intense. It means I'm getting fixed. And I always had this idea in my head that embark on this work for a certain period of time, and then you're going to have me fixed, and I'm never going to have to return to this again, and I can go on with my life. And here I am, a year and a half later, we're still working together, and my life keeps getting better. So, not about fixing. It's just
because you're not broken. This is what you said earlier.
Stuff. Yeah.
Right? It's that the more you try to fix yourself, the more it implies that you're broken.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're not fixing anything here. We're just stopping all the stuff that's getting in the way between you and who you really are.
Yeah.
So, any final words, final thoughts? This has been a year and a half journey, and it's just the beginning.
Mm-hmm. It's been a remarkable journey.
Yeah.
And again, simplicity wins the day. This is working. It's working. And that's why I keep returning. I keep coming back to this. Yeah, there are days where I want to run away. I don't think there's less of the stories that keep coming up now. There's less of the emotional blocks. I don't have this fear, shame, anger response when I think about my father now, because I've worked through a lot of that. There might be still some stuff there that, well, we actually just discovered another thing there on our last call.
But enough to get you so it's not running you, right? The bulk of it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm either nearing the tipping point or I passed the tipping point where I'm suffering less than I'm actually feeling okay, feeling good. So yeah.
So
I don't want it's a plug. It's a plug. This work is important. This work is effective. It gets results. Am I a millionaire today? Not yet.
Oh, but man, this musician thing, man, how cool is it going to be? How cool is it going to be if in 5 years, 10 years, we're going to have this video up and you're up for a Grammy and we have this video I mean, this is going to be remarkable, and that is absolutely possible. Um,
Hmm.
you're on that path to doing it, a path that was there but wasn't lit up before, and we've just
Hmm.
lit that up. That door's just been open. So that's why I
Hmm.
say, this is just the beginning. You have your whole life ahead of you,
Yeah.
and what you're going to do, it's up to you. And if you do it, it's going to be remarkable, and it's
Mhm.
going to bring so much beauty and creativity and love and joy into the world. And if you don't,
Mhm.
that's okay too. Whatever it is that you decide is going to be all right. It's
Mhm.
just really cool to see things like this that um, are just so magical, magnificent in the process of happening, of
Yeah.
unfolding.
Yeah, and I never really considered that because, like you said, the changes are they happen every week. So it's been a more gradual process. Like, I think the shock of dealing with everything that I've dealt with in the last year, if that had happened in the first 6 months, I might have went crazy just because of the sheer volume of stuff,
Yeah,
right? I might have went crazy. And sometimes I still feel like I am a little bit crazy, but it's,
probably a good thing.
you know
Yeah.
what? Always a work in progress. Hmm.
And play in progress almost at this
Play in
point.
progress,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm feeling so much more in my body. And there's parts of my body that I actually have sensation in now that I can notice the sensation. Uh, I was talking about my pelvis and my back. Uh, my calves, actually, I've noticed that
Hmm.
they've started loosening up on me. So I'm getting it from a few different spots now. I just got my calf twitch a little bit there. I can feel the tingly. It's just cool to actually feel what's going on in my body. It's not all the time, but a good percentage of the time now. I'm I'm aware, much more aware. And I don't hold my stomach, like hold this tension in my stomach when I'm washing my dishes anymore. It's just every now and again. Yeah.
Well, lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. This has been a
Oh, you're
remarkable
welcome.
journey to Yeah, it's been a remarkable journey together. We've only touched the surface, a year and a half. It's a lot of stuff we've done together. So this is just the surface of what we've done,
Yeah.
and a lot of stuff we can't share. It's very personal and private,
Sure.
and a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff has been really big. So thank you at least for coming on and sharing your experience, for taking all of this time out of your day that you could be writing your next symphony to share this with the world and share the lessons, all of the wisdom and learnings that you've had along this process, and
Hmm.
for your belief in me and this work, and not even belief anymore at this point. Like you said, it just works. So just your commitment, your dedication to yourself and to the process, and to being an example for people in the world, for what's possible when
Oh,
you
sure. Yeah.
when you start showing up,
Hmm.
stop suffering.
Yeah. Just show up. That's half the battle right there. Just
Yeah.
show up. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you
You
soon.
are welcome. See you soon.